We have officially started recording our first ever podcast.
Welcome.
I'm your host, Gabe. This is my co-host. Say your name.
Liam.
And this is...
I'm Jack.
I'm Harry.
And I'm Mega Overlord of the Universe.
Welcome,
I knew
Mega
someone
Overlord
was
of
not
the
going to
Universe.
say their name, and I was just like, I'm surprised it was you and not him.
Yeah.
Look, it got to me and no one had done it. Someone had to do it. I decided to take the hit.
All right, our first topic, I think we're going to discuss travel, just like ease into it.
Right on.
I feel like that's an easy thing, and so I don't travel a lot. So I don't know why I picked this topic. Well, okay, most of my traveling is like road trips with family, right? Or road trips with family and friends.
Yeah, I love a good
We can
family
get
road
stories
trip.
off that.
Yeah, but me and Gabe have never left the country though, so we haven't like
We've
traveled
never
the
left,
world.
yeah.
Gone like 2 states over, and that's about
And
it.
either way, like, I feel like I have the stress level of an experienced traveler when it comes to it.
Well, wait, so what? You guys have only ever been like 2 states away from?
No.
What's the
I've
farthest
been
from where we.
Have you ever been in a plane?
Yes, I have been in planes. I have been in planes. The furthest I've technically been from Montana is Florida.
Right on.
That's
Which-
fairly far.
That's
as far
yeah,
as the
yeah.
U.S. goes.
Yeah. As far as the U.S. goes, that's far. So like, I've been reasonable distance across the United States. I've just never been out of it.
Yeah.
And my biggest pet peeve when it comes to traveling in any way, shape, or form, and I think I get this because my family is the worst, and like there's 6 people, so like we always leave late, is I hate leaving late.
Yeah.
We agree upon a time, that is when we leave. And so we went on a ghost hunting venture with Arlen, and I've already bitched about this to him, so
the
he
guest
knows that he's not
family
going to
are seriously good at leaving late.
So-
I know personally
honestly
from
just
road
not
tripping.
on
with
their
So the best part
priority.
is, initially we were gonna leave late, and it was my fault, and I felt bad. So I was like, okay, you know what, this is fine. We'll like try to do stuff. So like we went to, cause I meant to dump like SD cards full of like
Sure.
camera videos like before we left. So we had like free SD cards, and we could save the footage that we had. And then Ben and I went to a store. And then we came back to the house, and the footage was done. And so, like, we were only going to leave, like, 13 minutes late, which is, like, way better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And then so I get outside at 4:13, and Arlen's like, I'm going to go fill up some water bottles. I forgot to start a fucking timer. But he's like, I'm going to go fill up some water bottles before we go. And I was like, okay. So I get out of the house at 4:13. By 4:53, he has finished filling up water bottles.
I would like to
That's
add the
impressive.
comment. I thoroughly enjoyed the road trip I had with
Oh,
the
yeah,
guest family, but we were nowhere on time.
It's like just a completely different paradigm between Jack and I's family,
Yeah.
where we tend to like we
say you're
sometimes we get a little overzealous about when
Okay.
we plan to leave. Like we're gonna leave at 6 a.m.
And then we leave
generally
half
leave
an
at
hour
about
later.
6:30.
I think-
okay.
I think part of the reason that like I have a pet peeve for it is that like leaving on trips with my family, it is always someone in my family's fault. This includes me.
Yeah.
That we're leaving late, and no one can like admit whose fault it is, when in reality it was probably all of us. That we're playing.
Deeply unfortunate.
Like it was probably all of us that were playing a factor in it, whether it's like someone needed this thing, or like someone forgot to pack this, blah 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 blah, and all that. No, I've never had like plane stress though. I think the only plane stress I've had is I had a plane that refused to go until 2 people moved to the back. So I was, of course, like the first person to go because I was like, let's just leave.
So, I don't have flying stress. Like per se, like just from being like very high up in the air, or like fear of flying or anything like
Right.
that. But being trapped inside a metal tube with some dozen strangers for 2 hours or more, some of whom might snore, sneeze, cough,
Oh,
fart.
okay, I see why.
You start to understand maybe why being in a plane is not my favorite thing. Now, the first 3 are the most important to me because of misophonia.
Yeah.
But the others, also people who like are gonna
Smell bad.
Smell bad. Yeah, like you never sat next to someone on a plane who didn't shower prior.
I fell asleep on a guy on a plane once. I've done it, like, I've
You
been on
probably did it in a
4
very friendly
plane-
way.
4
Oh.
plane trips, like total. But I fell asleep on a guy. I woke up and it was like as I was rolling off his shoulder, and I was like, I'm sorry, but I was so tired that he just passed out again.
Going the other
And that was that.
That's a very Canadian way of going about that situation.
I think the weirdest plane experience, my family went to Chicago this past spring break, and like, it was me, my brother, my dad, and my sister, like sitting here, and then there was 4 people. Clearly, they were all wearing a uniform of some
Sure.
sort, so they're clearly on the same like team, and they were getting back from whatever event or whatever, right? And just like they were screaming at each other and having like intense arguments, and they're like, "Oh, you gonna start this shit now? You gonna start this shit now?" They're like, and then one dude's like, "You gonna disrespect me like that right now? You gonna And I looked over, they were all playing Uno on their phones.
Harry, I don't know if you remember, you were small at the time, but the trip from, I don't remember if it was Scotland to Ireland or Ireland back to Scotland, for
Short flight.
our on-sweating short flight.
And Harry killed a guy.
It is essentially a bus with wings. It is the tiniest, shittiest, little tiny airplane. And the first 6 rows, 7 rows was an entire rugby team who had clearly had one too many pints before getting on the airplane. And they were loud and raucous and hilarious. And that was enjoyable to watch as small children on an airplane.
So what are some of your guys' favorite places you have traveled to?
Well, so I've been to Las Vegas, like a lot, because everyone always wants to go to Las Vegas, and I'm just always part of like the group of family that goes to Las Vegas, because I'm always willing to like travel, because I don't never got to do it that much. So
Yeah.
I've been to Las Vegas with like my dad's family, my mom's family, my stepdad's family, my stepmom's family. So I've just been to Vegas like a lot. So like last time I went to Vegas, I went with my cousin, and we decided to go on an adventure because we're like, fuck it, let's go on an adventure. And like everyone else was like too old, so they were sleeping or they were gambling, and that was about it. And so we're like, let's go to Trump Tower just to take a shit in it and then leave.
So did you find a toilet or did you find a conveniently empty hallway? Because I would seriously respect the
They had
latter.
pretty high security, so we just used the toilet. But the first thing he says to me, he gets in, it's my cousin Joey, and he goes in and he goes, This is disappointing. This is a disappointingly nice bathroom.
So I've also been to Vegas a couple of times. That city really weirds me out, by the way. Like, I'm fascinated with it, but it doesn't feel like a real city when you're actually like in the strip. It feels like a fake city painted on something else. I don't know what. I don't
Word.
want to know what
Word.
Eldritch Horror is underneath Vegas right now.
It feels like you're like
Uh,
Roadrunner in a cartoon just running through
Yeah,
the
it
wall.
does. But I actually gambled a little bit in Vegas the last time I was there, and I won. But it was at the airport because the whole time I'd been there, I'd been at a Taekwondo conference and I hadn't had time to actually gamble. And I was like, well, I'm here, I might as well. Like, so I set myself a limit. I was like, I'm not gonna spend more than $20. And as soon as I'm up, I'm gonna stop because I'm not gonna risk anything more. So go over one of the slot machines in the.
Needless to say,
airport.
Leela is now in debt.
I think I maybe played 3 coins or something, before it paid out. It ended up paying out on the slot machine, and I was 3 cents up from when I'd started, and I stopped.
Oh yeah.
Them's the rules.
making 3 cents in Vegas.
I've gambled in Vegas and won. All right, how many people can say that?
I think
Actually, a lot of people can say that, but I didn't go into debt either.
Well, so one of my favorite things to do in Vegas is just like observe the people, because like the people who go to Vegas are just like great. One of my best experiences in Vegas was I was on a bus from the Strip to Electric Avenue. That's what it's called. Fremont Street. Sorry, Fremont Street.
Did you
with
rock
the-
down to Electric Avenue?
Yeah, that's what I did.
Gonna take you high.
And there was this drunk guy on the bus, and he was just telling my brother, and my brother had a Batman shirt on. He was like, "Hey man, you like Batman?" And he was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I like Batman too. Not Robin though. Robin's a punk bitch. And he's just like, Robin's like, skiddly doo, and Batman's like, shut the fuck up, Robin. And then there was just this lady holding like a box of donuts, and he was just like staring at the donuts. It's like, those donuts look real good. The lady's like, and she's like trying to hide the donuts under her coat, but he's like,
Did you give
be
your brother
real
a look
nice
that
to
was
have a
just like,
donut
"Help
right
me."
now.
Oh my god.
No, but that's what I like, Vegas, is watching people fuck around. It's great.
I went to Florida. When I went to Florida, we went to Disney World, and that's why we went. And so it was my family. Now, we're all from Montana, and it was like the cold season in Florida, which is like 80 degrees there. And so here, that's hot. So we were all in like shorts and stuff, and everyone was in sweatshirts and just staring at us like we were the fucking freaks. Because we went on, and we decided we were going to go on all the water rides that day because they were empty because it was cold for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
And so we just went on all the water rides. There was one ride that had no traffic, so they let us go on it 6 times in a row and just like stay on the raft like as it passed by. So we just passed by and we learned the guy's name and we're like, "Hey guy." Hi again.
What's up, Kevin?
What's up, Greg? How you doing?
Yeah,
Like-
like, speaking of that kind of thing, like taking advantage of the differences between places. When we went to Norway, we were still a little bit jet lagged when we were just driving around exploring. We had the fantastic opportunity of going exploring everything at about 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. The great part about it was summer, so the sun was out. The sun had been out since 3:30 a.m.
Because
Yeah.
we were only 10 degrees below the Arctic Circle. So,
Yeah, so
like,
Oh.
it never
pretty
got
far
fully
north.
dark because we were a month after solstice and it was
Oh.
Exactly.
bright
But, like,
all the time.
We went to like Jotunheim National Park, and when we went in there, nobody was in there because it was 5 in the morning and they had just opened for some reason. They were open at 5 a.m. Mostly because there's like nobody staffing it because they don't care, I guess.
And because Norwegians don't like wreck shit like
They don't
Americans
jump
do.
into hot pools or melt themselves.
We actually had a similar experience in Goblin Valley down in Red Rock Country near Moab, because we went there in the wintertime, and that is not the height of tourist season. It's actually kind of chilly down there. There's like a little bit of snow sometimes, a little bit of ice, and so we went to Goblin Valley, and I guess usually it's like a very well visited place because it's awesome. It's like a bunch of a bit taller than people, like stacked rocks and like massive amounts of them. So it's like going through a hedge maze, but rocks instead.
Super cool.
Super cool. And no one was there. It was as quiet as it's ever been my entire life. Like, couldn't hear anything. I'm sure if it had been nighttime, you would have been able to see every freaking star in the sky. And I guess that's like the best time to go because
Sounds fantastic.
tourists are always there. Otherwise, I don't know.
And now our podcast is going to get famous, and that's going to become the time to go
That's
to
gonna
Goblin
go-
Valley,
we gotta
and
go.
it's we're going to ruin it for
Okay.
everyone.
Yeah. Don't watch this, guys. No
Just
one watch
ignore
it.
that last part.
Ignore it. Layla's a liar.
edit that
Don't
out.
go.
Lies compulsive.
Uh-huh.
Edit
It's
it
gone.
out quick.
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 You think I know how to
We'll
edit?
fix it in post.
Yeah, you should see his ghost show. It's not pretty.
Oh my god.
Have you guys ever been to a music festival?
Like outside of Montana?
Well,
Or, like,
the
outside-
only one I've been to is outside of Montana, so
I mean,
don't
unless
know.
you count
Um,
the local one.
I
No,
Count
I-
music on
like,
Maine.
Music on Maine, not really. No.
Yeah, no.
Sweet
So-
Pea,
What are
like
you talking about,
almost.
Jack? What are
So
you
I went to
talking
Lucidity down
Okay.
in Santa Barbara, or just outside of Santa Barbara, and going into it, I was like, yeah, I get to hang out with like cool hippie folks, and we get to wear like as much or as little as we want, and like wear ridiculous costumes, and it's gonna be great. The culture shock leaving was the coolest part, because we drove first into Santa Barbara and then back home through, Arizona and all these, other states and normal towns and whatnot, and the amount of freedom and like availability for people to be themselves at Lucidity, and I imagine numerous other music festivals like this around, and then going back to a place where people feel fear about, you know, whoever's around and like being in a gas station with strangers and whatever was really poignant to see this cultural difference of the like baseline fear in our society.
Well, so an interesting thing for me. So my parents were divorced, and so my dad lived in Butte, Montana, and my mom lived in Bozeman, Montana. And so I lived primarily with my mom and went to school here, but I'd like visit my dad on the weekends. And like my inhibitions would just disappear when I was in Butte. Like I'd fuck around so
Totally.
much. Like me and my buddies would get together, we'd run through other people's yards, like we'd climb on top of buildings, like we did not give a crap. And it was because I was like
'Cause Butte
nothing
is
that
anarchy.
well no, that's not
Because Butte is anarchy.
like but it was also because like it didn't matter what I did there because I wasn't gonna have to see anybody ever again. Because it was like, okay, you're gonna get me in trouble? No, you're not, because I'm gonna be gone. Like my parents can't ground me.
In a video game.
yeah.
Pressing
So
save first.
It's a video game when I'm in the zone. One player, one life.
No, cultural shock, like, that's like, I think one of the first times I've ever, like, in-depth explored a city was San Francisco.
Sure.
And so, like, for instance, the difference between, like, homeless people in Bozeman and homeless people in San Francisco.
Sure, totally.
Like, A, infinite more amount, and B, as, like, my dad and my mom have described it, is people in San Francisco have way more balls on them, like, with approaching people.
Oh yeah.
Because in,
'Cause
like,
they
Montana,
have
you...
to.
Yeah, they have to. Like, I understand, but, like, this guy, and this is one of my mom's favorite stories to tell. This was the first time my sister had ever seen, like, someone who, like, that classic homeless that makes you feel, like, shitty for having $1 in your pocket, right? And so my sister saw this guy, and he was every shade of dirt that you could possibly imagine. He was picking up used cigarettes and smoking them, and then he was ranting about the government and how, like, they were after him, right? And my sister was like, fuck, how was she, like 9 or 10 at the time? So my mom thought she might be terrified. She turned to
Sure.
my sister to try to, like, hug her. My sister was all excited, and she literally said, "Mom, it's my first hobo."
Alright.
Yeah, your sister's gonna be real excited to have that story broadcast to the world.
Oh my god, yeah. It was one of
Alright.
the funniest fucking things.
Alright, that's 15 minutes.
That's 15 minutes. All right,
What's the next
on to the
topic?
next topic.
What is it?